All right, top of the hour here. Let's kick this off. Welcome to today's Creatio Online User Group. We're going to be talking about marketing campaigns today. If you've never been with us before, per the usual, I will be recording this. I will make sure that you get a copy of that recording and a follow-up email. And you can always find these recordings on our website and on our YouTube channel as well if you're ever digging around for them. If there are any questions throughout, go ahead and shoot those over to us and we will try to get those answered for you as promptly as possible. So my name is Deneen. I'm the Director of Marketing and I will be hanging out here while Megan, our Director of Project Management, and Dana, our first time user group participant, woohoo, clapping silently, will be presenting to you guys on this topic. I'm going to toss the floor over to them and they're gonna get us going.
All right, thank you, Deneen. So we're running through marketing campaigns today, starting with the basics, what are campaigns and what are the benefits? We'll talk about what's new with campaigns, and then Dana's going to demo how to build a campaign and talk about reporting. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Starting really simple, the campaign section in Creatio allows you to set up and conduct marketing campaigns. In Creatio's world, this basically means that you're moving contacts automatically through a series of marketing efforts. So when you've got a series of steps that you want to do in sequence, perhaps with some sort of triggered start or perhaps started manually, sending emails, working with events and landing pages, creating follow-up activities, all sorts of fun things that we're going to get into more as we continue on here. So some of the benefits of using the campaign section in Creatio. First of all, they've designed it to be pretty easy to use. It's got drag and drop features, making it pretty simple to build and design your campaign. It allows you to automate your marketing campaign processes. So rather than sending out a series of emails, for example, individually one at a time, you can chain them together with the timing that you want and the logic that you want so that you just have to click start once and it automates the rest of the steps. It also helps you manage your audiences, so you make sure that you're reaching out to the right contacts, doing things like inviting the contacts that you want, reaching out to people that are interested and personalizing those emails. You can use campaigns to create your campaign workflows, like I said, to chain a series of steps together. And you can use it with conditional or triggered emails with landing pages and events. And it also helps with reporting because you have a series of steps, again, chained together or sequenced together. And you can report on the overall success of the campaign as well as on the individual steps. So it helps you see both the big picture and the nitty-gritty detail of how your specific marketing outreach efforts are going. If you've used campaigns before, you might be wondering what's new. So Creatio has rolled out a number of new features for campaigns in the last, say, 6 months or so. One of those is just a slightly revised look and feel for the campaign designer. So it just looks a little bit different. The main difference that I've noticed there is that it's a lot easier to see the logic that you've put in on the flows between elements. So if you have any filters on how the data flows from one step to the next, or how the contacts flow from one step to the next, I should say, the new UI makes that a lot more visible and easier to see and understand. There's also some new elements, some new functions that you can use. We're going to talk more about those on the next slide, so I'm not going to worry too much about that right this moment. And the one that I think I'm probably most excited about is this next bullet point, which is you can save elements to reuse them across any campaign. So this is really helpful in time saving. If you have a set of steps or a similar logic that you tend to use from one campaign to the next, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You don't have to re-click the buttons every time. You can save it from one campaign and use it again in that campaign or any other campaign. And that applies to any of the elements that we're going to see. So things like follow-up activities or logic that you tend to use after sending an email for deciding, what to do next. Any of the campaign elements can be saved and reused. And then finally, Creatio's added a lot of options around scheduling, throttling, and prioritizing emails. Throttling, I think, is especially important when you're warming up your email server or a new audience. So if you're using campaigns or emails in Creatio for the first time, or if you've added a new sending domain in Creatio, or if you've got a brand new list of people that you've never contacted before, throttling essentially slows down the sending so that the recipient email servers are less likely to classify your email as spam. If you're sending an email to, I don't know, say 5,000 people, and a lot of them have, say, Gmail addresses, Gmail is going to see that group of, let's say, 3,000 or 4,000 emails coming in all at once, unless you're using throttling. If you're using throttling, it's going to see them coming in smaller bunches, and it's not going to notice that you've just emailed 3,000 people. It's going to think that you're only emailing a handful each time. So I think that's a really nice game-changing function in Creatio to really help you build up your email sending deliverability. There's another word I was looking for, but I'm just going to go with deliverability, and really just increase that ability to get your emails to your audiences. All right, so what are all the things that you can do in a campaign? This is a list of every single element that's currently available in a campaign, meaning every single thing your campaign can do. Let's start with adding people to a campaign. So there are 4 different types of ad audience elements available in campaigns. The first one is just called adding an audience, and it's the most basic. It works together with folders or saved searches in Creatio so that you can add everyone who's in a folder to your campaign. You can use that to do sort of a one-off start where you're just sending it to everyone who's currently in that folder, but you can also use it on an ongoing basis, whereas more people get added to your folder, they will automatically start into the campaign if your campaign is still set to active. So it can be an ongoing thing as well as a one-time thing. Triggered ad is more like an automated start signal where it will only add someone to the audience when they first meet the criteria. So it can be based on creating of new contacts or modifying contacts in a specific way to match a certain criteria that you define. So it both avoids needing a separate folder that you set up first, as well as again, being kind of only a forward only basis. So it's not going to necessarily apply to your existing contacts. It will apply as they get added or modified in a specific way that you define in that step. And then you can connect the campaign to other elements that you have set up in Creatio, specifically events and landing pages. So add from an event basically means that as someone gets added to an event in Creatio, they would automatically be added to this campaign. So if you were doing things like automated reminder emails or something like that, that would be a good use for that function. An add from a landing page means that when someone submits a landing page that's connected to Creatio, a form on your website, that would automatically drop them into a campaign. So you could do something like some automated follow-up actions. So those are the 4 ways you can get someone into a campaign. Exit from a campaign is exactly what it sounds like. That's the end of a particular campaign or a branch in your campaign for a set of steps. One of the nice functions that's available there is that you can have multiple exits and classify each one as either successful or not successful and use that for reporting. So for example, if you have a step in your process in your campaign that if someone doesn't open an email, you don't continue sending them more emails as part of this campaign. You kind of drop them out of your campaign at that point. You can send them to an exit that's marked as not successful versus people who make it all the way through the various steps in your campaign and are interacting with your marketing efforts all the way through can be classified as successful. And that gives you easy, quick campaign reporting. And then your transition flows are moving the data from one step to the next. So every single step in your campaign is going to be connected to the next step until you get to the end, obviously. And you can have filters on those so that if you don't want everyone who gets to one step to go to the same next step, you can define logic there to control which step they go to next. So you can kind of branch off into different directions. That can be based on something like whether or not they've opened your email or clicked on something in your email or filled out a landing page. It can also be based on data in Creatio. So if you want to do something where like the first step is the same for everybody, but then based on industry or location or some other data field in your Creatio database, you can split into different branches from that as well. And then on the right-hand column here, I've got a list of all of the different kind of actions that we can take in a campaign. So probably the one that gets used the most is sending an email. So that's pretty self-explanatory. You set up an email that you're going to send out as part of your campaign. I will note that it has to be set up specifically as what Creatio calls a trigger email. So there's a couple different types of emails you can set up in the marketing email section. And also that you can only use a trigger email for one campaign. So if you're going to kind of send similar messaging in multiple campaigns, you create copies of them so that they're reported on separately from one campaign to the other. Add to an event is fairly self-explanatory. That just means you're going to add someone to a particular event set up in Creatio as part of the audience of that event. Add data lets you add basically any other record in Creatio that you want to add. The most frequent use things I see used for that are things like adding a follow-up activity or maybe creating a new lead for a contact who's engaged with your marketing content. By default, activity, call, putting a contact in a folder, and lead are the objects that are available there, but you can actually modify that through the drag and drop administrator tools. So it's easy to add more if you need some other object to be available. And that's true for modifying data as well. By default, only the contact object is set up to be modified, but if you need to modify something else, you can set that up as well. Eliminating duplicates is one of the new functions, new elements, and this works well if you've got multiple ad events in your campaign where you don't want someone to be duplicated and going through the campaign more than once. So you can add an eliminate duplicates element and define what your criteria is. Usually that's probably going to be email address for matching people up. And if the same email address is in your campaign already, then it'll stop them there and not send them forward to the next step. Random split is exactly what it sounds like. If you want to randomly divide your audience among the next steps, instead of defining some other logic, you can use a random split element to do that. So you could use that, for example, to do some A/B testing to, try a couple different versions of an email and see which performed better. The landing page element lets you basically check whether or not someone has filled out a specific landing page as part of the logic to decide whether or not to go forward to the next step. And a timer allows you to set a delay in the process, either for a specific date or time, or controlling what days and times to move on to the next step. Like if you're trying to do something only in business hours, basically just giving you more options for how to control the timing as you move from one step to the next.
Perfect. So now we're going to kind of discuss how to build a campaign within Creatio, kind of like what the steps are to really creating a successful campaign. So step number one is to, like any successful plan, is that we need to really identify what your overall campaign goal is. So in other words, what is it that you want your campaign to do? Is it to build a brand awareness? Is it to promote a new product or service? Or in our case today, is it to invite them to a webinar? So just being able to identify that overall goal can really make your process truly successful. Step number two is to plan out your campaign steps. So how are we originally like to think of it is to first begin thinking of or identifying who your campaign participants should be. Are you adding them from a previously created event? Are they from a folder that we previously created? Are they being added based on a landing page or the form that they filled out on a landing page? Or are they being added based on a specific filter? So let's say that anybody that is in the IT industry, that's in the Chicago area, is that how we want to filter or segment our records to import these records into our campaigns? So when thinking of your campaign steps, so make sure to think of all the different hard stops that may take place along the way. So this can be if a person opens an email but never responds to your email. If a person unsubscribes from email in general, where do you want those participants to go within your campaign? Just to kind of get an idea of like how the responses are is how you should be planning out your campaign steps. And then after you're done planning your goal, identifying kind of who your audience members are and your overall steps within the campaign is to kind of create the other elements that will be used within the campaign. So in Creatio, those are called sections. So you can create your trigger emails that you want to use using the email section, any folders that you want to use for the audience, and then any landing pages or events that you want to use throughout your campaign. Those need to be created prior to building your campaigns in the campaign designer as well. So after all those are done, then we're ready to, recreate your vision within Creatio. So let me kind of switch over to our Creatio. Perfect. Can we see my screen?
I see Megan's face.
Oh, okay, hold on. Can we see it now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. Sorry about that. So like previously stated within our previous slide, it's crucial to build all the other sections within Creatio prior to using the campaign flow. So when clicking on your campaigns, let's kind of talk about the layouts, the overall screen. So I've previously built some functions within Creatio to mirror this online user group. So I've created a campaign to talk about this online user group. And then I'll show you how to add functions and kind of steps along the way. So looking at the overall screen, to your left, we have your campaign name. And right now the campaign, I had started and stopped it, but there's two ways that the campaigns can start actually. So you can either do it manually, in which you can, click start and stop of the button right over here, or you can do it automatically, and that's based on a set scheduled start date and time. So that's two different ways. For the purpose, I kept it as manual. Right over here is after that your campaign starts, there's quick analytics to talk about, hey, who are your participants that are within your campaign and how many of them have overall reached your goal. Obviously, my campaign is not completed, so yeah, your analytics will change throughout once you start and stop your campaign. And then we will talk about the other tabs throughout as soon as we're done building our campaign. So let's go ahead and go into the campaign designer. So you have the elements that Megan previously discussed earlier in the slides right to your left. These are what we are going to use to build our campaign. A neat feature is that if you ever forget or really need a reference of what each element does, you can click this little cap down right over here, and it actually will take you to Creatio's knowledge base about each element. It's like a quick little reference page, so that's kind of a neat feature. And then you just kind of start. So again, it's a very drag and drop feature. So what I've created so far is that I have added a folder of previously created contacts that have previously created or previously participated in previous user groups.
Hey,
So
Dana, I'm going to pause you for a second. I don't know if it's on my end or if there's an issue in Zoom. Deneen, are you seeing what Dana's doing right now?
No, I thought it was just my end.
Oh.
Dana, we're still just seeing the first tab. We didn't see the designer open.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hang on. Hold that thought.
It might be sometimes if you share your screen, if you just share the whole screen versus like sometimes it'll share just a tab in your browser. There it is. I see it now.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry about that. So I have created a folder of participants that have previously participated in our online user groups. So obviously these are fake participants, but just for the vision of this campaign demo. So I have already done that. And again, these are all things that should be done prior to even going into this designer. So all your emails should be previously created, all your folders that you want to use, events, even connecting your landing page, that should all be done prior to even building this within the campaign designer. So that's the first step. And then think about kind of what's next. So what do you want them to receive? So obviously I want them to receive an invitation to our online user group. So that's done by just simply dragging the send email option and then kind of identifying, which trigger email to use. And this is to discuss our online user group. Again, this was previously created. This kind of gives you some, previously fields that based on whatever the settings were within the email, this would be the fields that have been populated by that. Here's the sender's name, sender's email. This is kind of what would show when the person is getting that email. And then there are different ways or routes that a person can respond, right? So they can either open that invitation and they can click on the link, which takes them to our landing page. They can never open our email, or they can open our email and never click on the actual link that's shown. So I've just shown just a few of those paths that could happen. So these are the conditional flows that Megan was talking about earlier. So let's say that a person is interested in our webinar and they clicked on the link that we've provided. This will take them to our landing page, and there's two routes that they can go. So they can either fill out that form, or they cannot submit that form. So again, the two different routes can go there. So just really identifying and planning out your campaign steps based on the participant's response can really make this a lot easier, obviously. And you really want to focus on that. Definitely hard stops. You don't want your participants to just go from one end to another without actually having that delay in steps and all of that. So let's say the person that opens it and the form is filled out, or the form is not submitted. So I want to, contact them again. I want to say, hey, are you still interested in our event? But I don't want to do it right away, right? You don't want to continuously bug them about our user group. So I want to have a delay in that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a 3-day delay. And if the form is not submitted, then they'll receive another email. And that email will be like, hey, are you still interested in this campaign or this webinar? If they, again, we're going to add that timer of that 3-day wait. We don't want to bombard them with a lot of questions and emails and concerns, because I'm sure, people are busy. They don't want to just click on the emails, just sit there and wait for the email. So we're going to wait that 3 days, the 3-day delay, and there's no response. We're going to go ahead and just assume that they're not interested and just completely exit them from our campaign. That's obviously one way of doing it. If they do respond to the second email, then they're going to go ahead back to the original flow of the campaign. So let's say that we waited 3 days and they decided to say, hey, they opened the email, they clicked the URL, and they did fill out the form on our landing page. Then we're going to go ahead and give them a thank you message. Say, hey, thanks so much for registering. But that's not it, right? So yes, we did kind of reach our goal, but we also want to remind people of our emails or of our user group. So I'm going to go ahead and continue building this campaign in front of you, just so you kind of see how easy this is done. So the next step would be anybody that has, confirmed and received this thank you email, I want to add them to an event. So using the add to event element, I want to add them to our online user group. So add to user group. I can type, that'd be great. And I want to connect it to our online user group. So again, this was previously connected, and the start date was obviously today. And this would just, again, some pre-generated fields based on what I've created in this event. And then I'm just simply going to connect these participants that I've already confirmed their registration and they've received this thank you email. They will all then be added to our user group participant list. So that's a really quick way, an easy way to automate your process instead of you having to go in there and manually, I'm sure back then people were manually entering them into a spreadsheet or something like that. So this is a easier way to do that. So then after that is that we want to remind them of the upcoming event, right? So we already have them confirmed, everything is well, and then now we want to send them reminders. So using the timer element within Creatio, there's different ways that you can send a timer. So I'm going to go ahead and connect those two, and I want to remind them of upcoming event. And how often do I want to remind them? So basically, I'm only using this once, so I'm only going to do this once, and I want to remind them, let's say 2 days before the event at 5 p.m. I know that's a Sunday, really weird date at time, somebody, but just to say, hey, your user group is 2 days away. So in 2 days, on this day at this time, I want to send them an email, and this is the reminder email. So again, it's very, very easy to, kind of build that flow. It's just a matter of actually understanding what each of these elements mean. And then connect the trigger email. Reminder. Again, previously created this. This is a reminder that our event is 2 days away. It's exactly the same people that have been participated. This is exact. Oh. And then think of things after the event, right? So after the event, we really want to know, how did we do on our event? Did users like it? Did people think that it was, short? Did people think it was too long? Whatever that feedback is crucial to kind of know what your customers are thinking or what your leads or prospects. So this is kind of another way to automate that. So I want to add another timer, and I want to set a reminder for myself or create a follow-up task to kind of check back with our participants after event. And I'm going to remind myself to do this again the day after. So tomorrow at 8 a.m. Actually, I'll do noon. And I want to create a follow-up task for myself. So I can do just that. And I decide which object. And again, like Megan said, these are the four, by default, the four objects that are connected, but obviously you can create new ones that, to better customize your needs. So I'm going to do an activity. Uh-oh, it's loading. Come on, Creatio. Promise this does not take that long. Let's see. Okay. Okay.
Maybe try changing it to something else and then changing it back to activity.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to point out that this is going to actually create multiple activities, one for each contact in your campaign. And you could assign those, for example, to the owners of those contacts. So your salespeople, for example, could be the people following up with their contacts after the event.
So let's just do call for the sake of this. And then I want to update which columns to, and I'm going to update the notes column. And then obviously you can animate the process, automate the process. Come on, my mouse hates me today. Okay, and then obviously you can dig deeper into this and continue adding which columns and values to set, and kind of assign that, like Megan said, to whoever salesperson you want to assign to send this to all your contacts that are in the user group. And then kind of after, the flow of the campaign works, you want to exit your campaign. And obviously, like Megan said, you can have multiple exits to the campaign, but we want to identify that this is our overall campaign goal. So this is the path that we want our participants to take in order to fully consider this as a successful campaign, right? So after all of that, I want to save. I don't know if it'll allow me to save because some of the dates are, yeah, we'll just save it. Okay. And then let me switch back over. Okay. So after we've created, let me refresh this. All of the steps, our new campaign will show over here. Obviously we can edit it here for reporting purposes. So a really cool reporting purposes is once the campaign is saved and started, obviously I did manually so we can start and stop the campaign this way. once you click start to the campaign, obviously your emails can't be edited or certain areas can't be edited within this campaign flow. So I'll go ahead and start my campaign. My campaign does not make sense because I set the timer 2 days ago. But you can kind of see, you would be able to see over here, filter where each participant will lie. So let's say that a participant completed the campaign, a little number would appear on top of the element, the corner of the element, and that's what you'll kind of see the flow of the campaign and where each participant lies. So that's a kind of really cool feature that way. Using the audience tab, you can kind of see all of the audience members that we have added into our campaign flow. These are obviously fake participants, and right now they've exited our campaign simply because none of them have opened our emails. But if these were real participants, you can kind of see their status, which step they're interested or which step they're currently under, if they completed that step, and then all the timestamps and time dates. Linked entities is everything that we are using within this campaign. So it's all the trigger emails that we're using, the connected landing page, the event that we've previously created and is using through this campaign, and any of the contact folders of participants and the folder type. It's all being used here. And then again, these are just the general attachments and notes and feed that are found within Creatio sections. So let's say that we want to report on our campaign. So there are different ways that you can do that. The first thing is that we want to talk about the campaign log. So a cool feature about the campaign log is that we want to see if there are any errors throughout the campaign, so we can see, you definitely want to monitor your campaign. You just don't want to leave it right after you've started the campaign. You can see exactly which actions has been taken, how many participants are in each step along the way, if everything is running successfully, if there are any errors, and again with the timer, the timestamps, and how long each of the participants have been in each step along the way as well. You can also do it by checking the campaign flow, as we talked about. We're filtering that out. We can click on dashboards as well. And we can kind of customize this, and you can configure these as needed. This would load. But this is just like the default set dashboard cards, but obviously this can be configured. And then finally, you can report on a particular email that is used within the campaign, and that could be done through the email section as well. So if you want to see, hey, how are your email trigger emails are performing, you can do that through the email section as well. So I'm going to turn this back over to Megan.
One point I will add about reporting that I think can be a little bit of a gotcha or surprise people at first, just because of the potential volume of data involved, the reporting on campaigns and emails is not in real time. So I believe it's once an hour by default. Creatio updates those reports both within your campaign and within a particular email. So just realize that when you're looking at a campaign, especially if you have a step or a couple of steps that execute immediately at the start of your campaign, don't panic if you don't see those numbers update right away. It's just that Creatio needs to catch up to where your campaign is in terms of the reporting. So it's done all the steps, it's just not updating the reporting in real time.
Okay. All right, so Megan, I'm going to switch this over to you to talk about the new releases.
We are not seeing your screen right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Wait, there you go. And let's.
Got it.
There you
go. Okay, so as always, we typically wrap up our user group by talking about what's new in Creatio. There have been a couple of minor releases since our last user group a few months ago. So the 7.18.1 release, some of the highlights there. First of all, there's a change in the process designer, or a new function there where you can assign process tasks to a role instead of just a specific user. So if you have things that need to be done by one of a group of users, like an approval or something like that, you can now assign those tasks to a role instead of just a single user. The homepage function was new in version 7.18. So as we go through these next couple of minor releases, we're certainly going to see some updates and improvements there. In the 7.18.1 release, we had some improvements making deleting easier, as well as automatically updating the page as your data has changed. So just doing an automatic refresh instead of the user having to click the refresh button. We talked about the email throttling options already, so some new functions there. And then they also added a function that they're calling Sales Playbook, which basically allows you to link a knowledge-based article to a dynamic case. So if you have like your opportunity process or your lead process, for example, and at a particular stage in that process, you want to remind your salesperson to do X, Y, and Z, you can put together that information into a knowledge base and link that to the dynamic case so that they're brought directly to that information, which is a nice little function.
Ooh.
And then the 7.18.2 release, go back one more.
Wow,
There we go. So this one, again, small but significant process improvement. You have the ability now to connect emails and other process activities to records. Essentially what that means is it's increased your visibility. If you want that email to be saved in Creatio as an email against the contact or lead that you emailed through a automated process, you can now save that email to the email section and have that visible in your record. And also, again, some additional homepage improvements. So in this version, they added the ability to copy a chart so you can easily make variations of the same thing, as well as making the movement and resizing more seamless. So it'll automatically move things up if you delete something or resize something so that, you know, two charts will fit next to each other, for example. Instead of you having to drag the second one up, it will automatically move them up when there's space. And we talked about scheduling already, so I think we're good there. Deneen, is there anything that you want to say to wrap up?
I just want to say thank you and good job to both of you, especially Dana on her inaugural user group. If you think Dana did an awesome job, let me hear some silence. Yeah. All right, guys. As I mentioned, I will get this recording out to you within 24 hours of this event. Keep an eye out for notifications about our next user group, which will be in November. I cannot believe I'm saying that, but that is when it will be because this year is almost over. So have an amazing rest of your week, and thank you for joining us today.